there is a word that has followed you your entire life. You have heard it in classrooms, in relationships, in workplaces, whispered behind your back and said directly to your face. Stubborn, difficult, defiant, too much. And somewhere along the way, you started to wonder if they were right, if there was something fundamentally broken in you, something that made ordinary life, ordinary compliance, ordinary obedience feel like swallowing glass. You know the moment I'm describing. Someone tells you to do something, and it doesn't matter whether the task itself is reasonable. It doesn't matter whether you were already planning to do it. The moment the words leave their mouth with that particular weight behind them, that particular assumption of authority, something inside you closes like a fist. Not because you're being childish, not because you enjoy conflict, but because something in the deepest architecture of who you are recoils from the feeling of being controlled. Recoils from it the way a body recoils from pain. And maybe you've spent years apologizing for that. Maybe you've sat across from managers and partners and parents and tried to explain yourself, tried to soften the edges of something that felt unsoftenable. Maybe you've wondered why other people seem to accept directions so easily, so naturally, as if surrendering a little autonomy costs them nothing, as if it doesn't even register as a loss. But here is what I want you to understand before we go any further. That resistance you carry, that deep and sometimes exhausting refusal to simply comply, is not a character defect. It is not evidence of immaturity or arrogance or damage. It is, when you understand it fully, a sign that your mind was built to protect something most people quietly surrendered, without even realizing they were giving it away. Your right to think for yourself, your right to govern your own inner world, your right to exist as an autonomous being rather than a function in someone else's system. Psychology has been studying this for decades, and what the research reveals is not a portrait of a difficult person. It is a portrait of a mind wired for something rare, something that carries its own costs and its own gifts, something that, once you understand it, might finally make sense of a lifetime of feeling like you were always slightly out of step with a world that seemed to want you quieter, more compliant, more manageable. So let's talk about what is actually happening inside you. Let's give language to something you felt your whole life, but may never have had the words for. The first thing to understand is that what you experience isn't simply stubbornness. Stubbornness implies irrationality, a refusal to move even when movement is clearly called for. What you experience is something more specific and more psychologically significant. Behavioral scientists call it psychological reactance. And it is not a personality quirk. It is a cognitive mechanism, a built-in response system that activates when your sense of freedom is threatened. Here is how it works. Your brain, at a fundamental level, treats your autonomy as territory, not metaphorically, neurologically. The freedom to make your own choices, to move through the world according to your own judgment, is coded by your brain as something to be protected. And when someone issues a command, particularly an unsolicited one, particularly one delivered with an assumption of authority rather than an invitation to cooperation. Your brain reads that as a territorial incursion, as a threat. And what does a threatened organism do? It defends itself, it pushes back, it restores what was taken. This is why the phenomenon plays out in that particular way you know so well. Someone tells you to do something you were already going to do, and suddenly you don't want to do it anymore. Not because you changed your mind about the task, but because the task is no longer yours. It has been colonized by someone else's will, and your brain is fighting to reclaim it. Your refusal in that moment isn't pettiness. It isn't immaturity. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, protecting your agency, restoring your sense of self-determination. Research on psychological reactance, first formalized by social psychologist Jack Brem in the 1960s, shows that this response is strongest in people who have a high baseline sense of their own freedom. People who feel deeply that they have the right to determine their own behavior. And when that sense of freedom is threatened, the motivation to restore it doesn't just match the threat, it often exceeds it. The more someone pushes, the more you pull back. Not because you're trying to be difficult, but because your internal system is calibrated to resist pressure at the same intensity it is applied. And here is the part that most people around you have never understood. The part that has caused so much friction in your relationships and your workplaces and your family systems. This isn't a choice you're making in the moment. It isn't a decision you consciously arrive at. It happens before thought. It happens in the body, in the nervous system, before your rational mind even has a chance to weigh in. You feel the resistance before you understand it. And by the time you're analyzing the situation, the refusal is already there, already real, already shaping your response. That doesn't make you a prisoner of your own reactance. Understanding it gives you power over it. But it does mean that all those years of being told to just comply, to just follow instructions, to just stop making everything difficult, were asking you to override something that runs deeper than habit, deeper than attitude, deeper than choice. And that's the exhausting part. Not the resistance itself, but the constant performance of trying to hide it, trying to look cooperative while your entire inner world is pushing back against something that feels like a violation of something sacred. If this is already resonating with you, if you're hearing language for something you've felt for a long time, please like this video and subscribe so we can keep exploring this territory together. But psychological reactance is only the beginning of the story, because there's a dimension to your relationship with authority that goes beyond the automatic pushback. There's something more discerning happening, something that actually reveals a sophistication in how you process power and direction. You don't hate authority, you hate incompetent authority. And that distinction matters enormously. Think about the people in your life who you have genuinely, willingly followed. The teachers who explained the why behind every instruction. The leaders who earned your respect through demonstrated competence and integrity. The mentors who gave you information and trusted you to draw your own conclusions. You didn't resist them. You may have even sought them out. You may have been more cooperative with them than most people are, because when authority is legitimate, when it is grounded in actual knowledge and genuine care for the people it leads, something in you recognizes it. Something in you can consent to it, because that's what you're actually doing when you follow someone's direction. You're not obeying, you're consenting, and consent requires that you have evaluated the situation and found it worthy of your trust. Most people don't operate this way. Most people are conditioned from childhood to treat authority as a given, to comply with titles and positions and institutional roles without necessarily examining whether the person behind the title has earned the right to lead. They move through the world in what social psychologists call the agentic state, a mode of being in which personal judgment is suspended in favor of deference to authority. They stop asking whether the command makes sense and simply ask whether the person giving it has the right to give it. You cannot do this. And not because you're arrogant, because you're wired differently, because your brain runs what might be called a competence filter. Before it will accept direction, it needs to know that the direction is sound, that the person offering it understands the situation, that following their lead will produce a result that makes sense. And if that evaluation more comes back negative, if the authority figure can't explain their reasoning, if their instructions contradict what you can plainly see, if they're leading from ego rather than knowledge, your brain hits something like an emergency brake, not out of defiance, out of integrity. This is why you have probably been labeled difficult in environments that rewarded blind compliance. Because the systems that demand obedience without explanation, that expect you to follow simply because someone has a title or a position, are systems built on the assumption that most people will suspend their own judgment. And when you don't, when you ask why, when you need the reasoning before you can genuinely cooperate, you become a problem. Not because you are a problem, but because the system doesn't know what to do with someone who won't surrender their critical thinking at the door. And here's what makes this so difficult to understand from the outside. Your competence filter doesn't look like discernment to people who've never experienced it. It looks like insubordination. It looks like arrogance. It looks like a belief that you know better than everyone else. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that you are applying the same rigorous evaluation to authority that you apply to everything else. You are asking the same question you ask of any information, any argument, any claim. Does this hold up? Is this sound? Does this make sense? You are not refusing to be led. You are refusing to be misled. And there is a profound difference between those two things. But this quality, this refusal to surrender your critical faculty to the group, to the institution, to the consensus, carries a weight that people rarely acknowledge. Because living with an active, questioning mind in a world that runs on conformity is not easy. It is often lonely. It is often isolating. And the isolation is not incidental. It is structural. When you won't play the social games that hold groups together, when you can't perform enthusiasm for ideas you don't believe in, when you ask the uncomfortable questions that others have silently agreed not to ask, you become someone who disrupts the social equilibrium. And social groups, by their nature, tend to push out the elements that disrupt their equilibrium. Not always consciously, not always cruelly, but consistently. So you may have found yourself on the outside of things more often than you wanted to be. Not because you don't value connection, not because you don't want to belong, but because belonging, in most social contexts, comes with a price tag. And the price tag is a degree of self-suppression that you are constitutionally unable to pay without feeling like you're betraying something fundamental about yourself. I want to pause here and ask you something. When did you first notice this in yourself? Was there a specific moment, a teacher, a workplace, a relationship, where you realized your relationship with authority was fundamentally different from the people around you? Share that moment in the comments, because someone else is going to read it and feel a little less alone in this. This connects to something that psychologists who study identity and consciousness call cognitive sovereignty. The deep, almost primal need to maintain ownership over your own thoughts, to be the author of your own conclusions, to receive information and process it through your own judgment, rather than being handed a preformed belief and expected to adopt it. When someone tries to tell you not just what to do, but how to think, when they try to hand you a conclusion and expect you to accept it without the reasoning behind it, when they use social pressure or emotional manipulation or appeals to authority to bypass your critical thinking and install a belief directly, something in you responds with a fury that might surprise even you. Because this is the deepest violation. This is not just trespassing on your behavioral autonomy. This is attempting to colonize your mind. And you feel it. You feel it the way you'd feel a hand closing around your wrist. That particular claustrophobic sensation of someone trying to determine not just what you do, but who you are. Research in social psychology has documented the mechanisms through which groups and institutions achieve this kind of cognitive compliance. The gradual normalization of certain ideas through repetition, the social cost of dissent, the manufactured consensus that makes questioning the group narrative feel not just wrong, but shameful. These mechanisms work remarkably well on most people, not because most people are weak or foolish, but because human beings are social animals, and the pain of exclusion is neurologically real. The brain registers social rejection in the same regions that process physical pain. So the pressure to conform, to think what the group thinks, to believe what the institution wants you to believe is not just social, it is biological. But something in you has always been resistant to this process. Something in you has always maintained a kind of internal firewall against the installation of beliefs you haven't personally vetted. And while this has cost you, while it has meant friction and isolation and the exhausting work of holding your own ground in environments that wanted you to surrender it, it has also meant something else. It has meant that you think for yourself in a world where genuine, independent thought is rarer than most people realize. You are what some researchers have called a system disruptor, not in the dramatic sense, not necessarily in the public sense, but in the quiet, daily sense of being someone who asks why when everyone else has stopped asking. Someone who notices the emperor's new clothes when everyone else has agreed to admire them. someone who maintains their own perspective even when the social pressure to abandon it is enormous. And maybe that's the real cost of this kind of mind. Not just the isolation, but the loneliness of being the one who sees things differently and knowing that saying so will only make you more of an outsider. The loneliness of understanding something that the people around you have agreed not to see. But there's another dimension to all of this that goes beyond how you relate to authority and to group pressure. There's something about what motivates you, what actually moves you to action, that is fundamentally different from how most people are moved. And understanding this might explain more of your life than almost anything else. Psychologists who study human motivation have identified two broad categories of motivational fuel. Extrinsic motivation, which comes from outside, from rewards and recognition and status and approval. And intrinsic motivation, which comes from inside, from genuine interest, from personal meaning, from the experience of doing something that feels like yours. Most people can be moved by both. Most people will work hard for a paycheck, will perform for recognition, will shape their behavior to earn approval. These external rewards are real and powerful, and for most people, sufficient. But for you, extrinsic motivation has always been strangely hollow. Not entirely absent, but insufficient. You can feel the difference between doing something because it's genuinely yours, because you chose it, because it matters to you, and doing something because someone else wants you to. And the difference isn't just emotional, it's physical. It's in your energy levels, in your focus, in your capacity to sustain effort. When the work is yours, when the goal is yours, when you are the author of the direction, you can sustain an intensity of effort that surprises even you. When the work belongs to someone else's agenda, when you're executing someone else's vision under someone else's direction, something in you runs at a fraction of its capacity. This is what self-determination theory, one of the most robust frameworks in motivational psychology, calls autonomy-based motivation. The research, developed by psychologists Edward Dickey and Richard Ryan over decades of study, shows that autonomy is not just one motivational factor among many. For some people, it is the primary fuel, the condition without which genuine engagement is nearly impossible. And you are, almost certainly, one of those people. This explains so much that might have confused you about yourself. Why you could work with extraordinary dedication on projects that were entirely self-directed, but struggled to maintain even basic engagement in environments where every task was assigned and every method was prescribed. Why you felt more alive in the chaos of building something from nothing than in the security of a structured role. Why the idea of being your own authority, even when it came with uncertainty and risk and the absence of a safety net, felt more like freedom than the alternative ever did. It also explains something that might have been a source of shame. The way that micromanagement doesn't just frustrate you, but actually diminishes your capacity. The way that being closely supervised, being checked on, being asked to account for every decision doesn't make you more careful or more productive. It makes you less. Not because you're being defiant, but because the surveillance itself, the implicit message that your judgment cannot be trusted, that someone else needs to oversee your process, removes the very thing that makes your engagement possible. It removes your ownership of the work. You are not someone who performs well under control. You are someone who performs at your highest level when given a direction and then trusted to find your own way there. When given a problem and then trusted to solve it. When given a goal and then trusted to determine the path. This is not arrogance. This is architecture. This is how your mind is built. And it means that the environments most likely to bring out your best are not the ones that most people would consider safe or stable. They are the environments that give you room. Room to think, to experiment, to fail and adjust and try again. Room to own your process. Room to be the author of your own approach. And here is something that might be both painful and liberating to acknowledge. Many of the environments you have moved through in your life were probably not those environments. Many of the structures you have been placed in, the schools and workplaces and institutions, were built on the assumption that direction flows from the top down and that the appropriate response to that direction is compliance. And in those environments, you may have looked like a problem. You may have felt like a problem, but the mismatch was not evidence that you were broken. It was evidence that you were in the wrong ecosystem. Fish don't fail at climbing trees. They are simply not in water. Now there is one more layer to this that I want to spend time with, because it may be the most misunderstood aspect of who you are. And it is the one that has probably caused you the most pain in your relationships and in your own self-perception. When you resist a command, when you refuse to adopt a belief you don't hold, when you can't perform enthusiasm for something that feels hollow to you, people often interpret this as arrogance, as a belief that you are better than others, as a kind of contempt for the people around you. And if you've heard this enough times, you may have started to wonder if they're right. You may have started to examine yourself for the arrogance they're describing. You may have turned the accusation inward and found yourself genuinely uncertain about your own motivations. But here is what I want you to consider. What looks like arrogance from the outside is often something entirely different on the inside. What looks like a belief that you know better is often something more like an inability to pretend that you believe something you don't. An inability to perform agreement when genuine agreement is absent. Some psychologists and researchers who study personality and values talk about what might be called integrity dominance, the condition in which a person's sense of self is so deeply tied to authenticity, to alignment between inner belief and outer behavior, that performing beliefs they don't hold feels not just uncomfortable, but like a fundamental violation of self, like lying, like a kind of self-betrayal. For you, compliance without genuine agreement doesn't feel like flexibility or cooperation. It feels like dishonesty. It feels like putting on a costume that doesn't belong to you and pretending to be someone you're not. And your nervous system knows the difference. Your body knows when you are in alignment with yourself and when you are not. And the dissonance of performing what you don't feel is not a small discomfort. It is a significant and sustained distress. This is why you can't fake enthusiasm. This is why you can't perform agreement you don't feel. Not because you're unwilling to cooperate, but because your entire system is oriented toward authenticity in a way that makes inauthenticity genuinely costly, genuinely painful. And the cruel irony is that this quality, this deep integrity, this refusal to perform what you don't believe, is actually one of the most valuable things about you. It is the quality that makes you trustworthy in the deepest sense. Because when you do agree, when you do express enthusiasm, when you do commit to something, no one has to wonder whether you mean it. They know you mean it, because you are constitutionally incapable of saying it otherwise. But society has not always known what to do with this quality. Institutions and social systems generally run more smoothly when people are willing to perform the required emotions, to say the expected things, to maintain the social fictions that hold groups together. And someone who can't do this, who keeps introducing the friction of genuine response into spaces that run on performance, becomes inconvenient, becomes labeled as difficult, as arrogant, as someone who thinks they're better than everyone else. When really, what they are is someone who thinks honesty matters more than comfort. Someone who values truth over social lubrication. Someone who would rather be genuinely present in a conversation than perform a version of presence that feels hollow. That is not arrogance. That is integrity. And the difference between those two things is enormous, even if the people around you have not always been able to see it. I want to pause here and say something directly to you. If you have spent years being told that your resistance, your questioning, your refusal to simply comply is a problem, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not the problem. You are never the problem. You are a specific kind of mind navigating a world that was largely not designed for you. A world that runs on systems that require compliance, that reward performance, that are made uncomfortable by genuine independence of thought. And yes, that has been hard. The loneliness of it has been real. The friction has been real. The moments of wondering whether everyone else is right and you are simply broken. Those moments have been real, and they have cost you something. They have cost you the energy of self-doubt when you needed that energy for other things. But you are not broken. You are not defective. You are not arrogant or difficult or too much. You are someone whose mind is oriented toward autonomy, toward integrity, toward genuine thought in a world that often prefers managed thought. And that orientation has costs, but it also has gifts. Gifts that the world genuinely needs, even when it doesn't know how to receive them. Human history, and I say this not as a platitude, but as a genuine observation of how change actually happens, has not been moved forward by people who did what they were told and thought what they were told to think. It has been moved forward by people who looked at the consensus and asked whether it was actually true. By people who felt the social pressure to conform and felt it just as acutely as everyone else, but could not surrender their own judgment to it. By people who asked why, when asking why was dangerous or unpopular or lonely. These were not always comfortable people to be around. They were often labeled exactly as you have been labeled: difficult, arrogant, defiant, too much. The history books tend to rehabilitate them eventually, once the distance of time makes their descent look like courage rather than inconvenience. But in their own moment, they often paid the social cost of being someone who wouldn't simply go along. You are in that lineage, not because you are destined for historical significance, though perhaps you are, but because you carry the same cognitive architecture, the same deep resistance to having your reality dictated to you, the same inability to perform belief you don't hold, the same need to be the author of your own conclusions. And in a time when the mechanisms for manufacturing consensus have never been more sophisticated, when the pressure to think certain things and believe certain things and perform certain identities is applied through channels that are nearly invisible, the presence of minds like yours is not just valuable, it is necessary. You are, in a very real sense, a safeguard, a check on the tendency of groups and systems to drift toward a kind of collective sleepwalking where everyone agrees because everyone else is agreeing. You are the one who stays awake. Now, I want to speak to something that might be sitting uncomfortably as you listen to all of this, because understanding the psychological architecture of your independence doesn't automatically make it easier to live with. Knowing why you are the way you are doesn't dissolve the loneliness of it, doesn't erase the friction, doesn't make the relationships easier, or the workplaces more tolerable, or the moments of wondering whether you'd be happier if you could just let go a little less painful. Understanding yourself is the beginning, not the end. So what does it actually look like to live well with this kind of mind? Not to change it, not to suppress it, not to finally become the compliant, manageable person that various systems have wanted you to be, but to work with it, to find the environments and the relationships and the ways of being in the world that allow this architecture to function at its best, rather than constantly grinding against structures that weren't built for it. Part of the answer is environment. The research on autonomy-based motivation is clear that people with high need for autonomy don't just prefer certain environments, they require them. Environments that give you genuine ownership over your work. Relationships that allow you to arrive at your own conclusions rather than requiring you to adopt someone else's. Communities that value genuine thought over performed agreement. These are not luxuries for you. They are conditions, the difference between thriving and surviving. And part of the answer is relationships. Because the people in your life who have been able to stay, who have been able to love you without needing to manage you, who have learned to offer their thoughts as invitations rather than directives, who have understood that your questioning is not rejection but engagement. These people are rare, and they are worth recognizing for the gift they are. Not everyone can love someone who won't be told what to think. It requires a particular kind of security in oneself, a particular willingness to be questioned without feeling threatened. And the people in your life who have managed it deserve to know that you see them. And part of the answer is self-compassion, because the internalized voice that says you are difficult, that says you should be able to just comply, that says other people manage this fine, so why can't you? That voice is not your friend. It is the accumulated weight of every environment that wanted you different, and it deserves to be questioned with the same rigor you apply to everything else. Because when you examine it closely, when you ask where it came from and whether it's actually true, you may find that it holds up no better than any other claim that was handed to you without evidence and expected to be accepted on faith. You are not difficult, you are differently wired, and there is a profound difference between those two things. There is also something worth saying about the relationship between your kind of mind and the experience of being misunderstood. Because if you have this orientation, if you carry this high need for autonomy and this commitment to integrity and this refusal to surrender your critical thinking to consensus, you have almost certainly spent significant portions of your life feeling misunderstood, feeling like the people around you were seeing something in you that wasn't quite you. A caricature, a problem, a type, and the experience of being misunderstood is its own kind of loneliness, different from the loneliness of being alone. It is the loneliness of being present and still invisible, of being seen and still not known, of trying to explain yourself and watching the explanation fail to land. If you have felt that, I want you to know that it is not evidence of a failure of communication on your part. It is evidence of a genuine gap between your internal experience and the frameworks most people use to interpret behavior. When most people see resistance, they read it through the lens of their own relationship with authority, which is usually a relationship of compliance. And through that lens, your resistance looks like defiance, like ego, like a refusal to be part of the team. But you know what it feels like from the inside. You know that it is not contempt for others, it is fidelity to yourself. And those are not the same thing, even when they look similar from a distance. What has it cost you living this way? And what has it given you that you wouldn't trade? Leave your answer in the comments, because that tension, the cost and the gift of this kind of mind is something this community deserves to sit with together. The language for what you experience has existed in psychology for decades. Psychological reactance, autonomy-based motivation, cognitive sovereignty, integrity dominance. These are not diagnoses, they are not pathologies, they are descriptions of a recognizable and studied human pattern. A pattern that has its costs and its gifts, its challenges and its profound value. And having language for your experience matters. It matters because it moves you out of the territory of being broken and into the territory of being understood. It matters because it allows you to stop fighting yourself and start working with yourself. It matters because it lets you look back at a lifetime of being called difficult and understand that the difficulty was not in you. It was in the mismatch between who you are and what was being asked of you. You were never meant to be tamed. You were never meant to surrender your thinking to someone else's agenda. You were never meant to perform beliefs you don't hold, or enthusiasm you don't feel, or compliance that costs you your integrity. That was never the design. That was always the demand of systems that needed you manageable. And you couldn't be managed. And that is not a failure. That is, perhaps, the most important thing about you. So the next time someone calls you difficult because you asked why before you agreed, the next time someone calls you arrogant because you couldn't perform enthusiasm for something that felt hollow, the next time someone calls you stubborn because you held your ground when the social pressure to let go was enormous, I want you to remember this. Your nervous system is not broken. It is calibrated for something specific. It is calibrated for truth over comfort, for integrity over performance, for genuine thought over managed consensus. That calibration has cost you things, real things, relationships and opportunities and the ease of simply fitting in. And those costs deserve to be acknowledged, not minimized. The loneliness has been real. The friction has been real. The moments of wondering whether you'd be better off if you could just let go have been real. But so have the gifts, the clarity, the trustworthiness, the capacity for genuine engagement. When genuine engagement is possible, the ability to see through the manufactured consensus to the question underneath, the presence of a mind that stays awake when everything in the social environment is pushing toward sleep. You are not broken because you can't be controlled. You are not defective because you can't perform what you don't feel. You are not difficult because you need to understand before you can genuinely comply. You are someone whose mind is oriented toward autonomy and truth and integrity in a world that often prefers something easier to manage. And that is not a flaw. That is, when you finally have language for it, when you finally understand the architecture of it, a kind of freedom, a freedom that has always been yours, even in the moments when it felt like a cage. If this video helped you feel seen, if it gave you language for something you've carried for a long time without quite knowing what to call it, I hope you'll stay. There is so much more to explore together, so much more of the hidden landscape of human experience that deserves this kind of attention, this kind of care. If you know someone who has spent their life being called too much, too difficult, too resistant, someone who has carried that weight without ever having the language to push back against it, share this with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for another person is hand them a framework that finally makes their own experience make sense. That single act of sharing might be the thing that shifts how they see themselves. And if you feel safe, share your experience in the comments. Tell us what it has been like to live in this particular kind of mind, because someone out there is watching this and still feeling alone in it. And your voice, your specific and honest account of what this has been like for you, might be the thing that makes them feel a little less invisible. Thank you for watching. There is a video that belongs right next to this one. The psychology of the child who raised themselves explores how early experiences of having to become your own authority your own caretaker, your own source of direction. Wire a mind in ways that make external control feel not just uncomfortable, but genuinely threatening. If what we explored here resonated, that one will take it deeper.